coming on the air with President Trump speaking now from the White House after a new trade tit for tat, literally announcing what he's calling reciprocal tariffs, as he's now meeting with the leader of a country he's called the Tariff King. We are live at the White House with why it's such a big deal for President Trump to be side by side with India's prime minister. Also new tonight, new details and brand new reaction from New York City's mayor after not one, not two, but 3 federal prosecutors are resigning after refusing to drop his corruption case. We'll also take you live to California, where in just the last 15 minutes, we are getting new video of mudslides threatening some of those very same areas. Look at this, where those devastating wildfires hit just weeks ago. Plus, the president's pick to run a department he wants to get rid of, facing questions from senators, how Linda McMahon could reshape your kids' schools. We're also on the ground in Texas, in the heart of a county where an outbreak of measles among unvaccinated kids may be even worse than health experts think. And the multi-million-dollar settlement Elon Musk's company paid out to President Trump. But why where the money goes is being kept hidden, at least for now. That's coming up a little bit later in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and in just the last couple of minutes, we have seen now this new video in from the White House of President Trump side by side with the Prime Minister of India. The two of them taking questions among the so-called pool reporters. We've talked about that before a bigger press conference later on tonight. We think it could happen during this show. We're going to bring that to you live. This is a big deal, especially for Modi, who rarely faces the press back home in India. We're going to have the newest details out of that in just a bit. And the talks come with a couple of elephants in the room. And maybe the biggest one, China, with both of these leaders looking for ways to strengthen their ties. What does that look like? Could be a new defense deal that's being talked about today, according to a senior administration official. Perhaps, as you see there, maybe it's trade. Mr. Trump has called Modi the Tariff King. And we hear from administration officials the president's on the hunt for a new trade deal. That's why it may not be so coincidental that today President Trump's announcing his long-awaited reciprocal tariffs, as they're called, India included. Basically, the U.S. hitting other countries with the same tariffs they put on us. It's not going to happen just yet. Press pause there. Let's bring in Yamiche Alcindor, who's outside the White House for us. Trade, obviously, this big thing that is looming over the Trump-Modi relationship. So help us understand specifically what the president wants to change.
That's right, Hallie. Well, the president is essentially saying that there's an imbalance in what the United States gets and what it puts out when it comes to trade agreements. And particularly, if you look at India, we should put it up for folks sort of what the trade imbalance is that President Trump is looking at. So $87 billion in exports to the U.S. by India in 2024, but $42 billion in imports of U.S. goods. So that's essentially President Trump saying, look, you're taking in not as much U.S. goods as you should be putting out. The other thing we're looking at is average tariffs on imports. If you look at India, it's 14%. China, it's 6.5%. Canada, it's 1.8%. So what the president's saying is that he really wants to look at our trade agreements. He's saying that he's going to have his economic aides go country by country to look at those different aids and look at those different tariff prices. Then he says in about 180 days, he expects to have a report that on his desk. That's why you're saying that this could be a long while in terms of the tariffs here, because the president is going to have a sort of big leeway and a big way to look at sort of how long it's going to take for him to assess what he wants to make these tariffs and how he wants to adjust things, Hallie.
Okay, so set the table for us, Yamiche, because right now we just showed that video on the left side of the screen. That is these two leaders obviously meeting in the Oval Office, but there's going to be this news conference. This is the playback we're getting now. There's going to be a news conference a little bit later on where both of them will face some questions, and there is plenty to talk to President Trump about, right?
There is plenty to talk to President Trump about. When it comes to India and the United States, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to trade, because the president is really trying to make good on his campaign promise to make America rich again in some ways, and saying that he really wants to institute these new trade policies, not just on India, but on Canada, on Mexico we saw before, on China, to look at how the United States is really dealing with trade. But there's also a lot of other questions on the table when you think about sort of the role of the United States, when you think about the news that he's making with these tariffs, but also the news that he's making when he's talking to different leaders around the country. There was this Oval Office break where we heard on a number of topics, including the relationship between Russia and Ukraine and how the president is looking to get peace there. There was also this talk of cutting the spending at the Defense Department by 50%. That's right, half of what Pete Hegseth's budget would be. So there are a lot of topics that we could hear about in this press conference. So definitely going to be watching out to see what topics come up.
No kidding. Yamiche, thank you very much. I know you're staying close to to a camera for when that actually happens. Appreciate that. We want to get to some breaking news out of New York now, where we are today. The acting U.S. attorney out of Manhattan, now one of 3 prosecutors who we've learned are stepping down. They're refusing to follow orders to drop corruption charges against the city's mayor, Eric Adams. And in just the last hour, in a brand new interview with our station here in New York, our NBC News station, Adams is conducting a new interview. Watch this.
I believe that the AG has made it clear that she's going after weaponization of the Justice Department, and I encourage, and as they say, I'm Eric Adams, and I approve of that message.
And there you have it. Our team just getting its hands on a letter from Danielle Sasson talking about a meeting at the end of January where she says Adams' attorneys, quote, repeatedly urged what amounted to a quid pro quo, that the mayor could help the Justice Department on enforcement priorities only if the indictment were dismissed. But Sassoon did not dismiss the indictment, despite orders from the person who was the number 2 at the time at the Justice Department. And 2 sources say that when she refused, the DOJ reassigned the case to 2 other people who also refused to drop the case and resigned. Remember, Mayor Adams had faced up to 45 years in prison on charges related to wire fraud, bribery, accepting donations from foreign nationals in Turkey. He pleaded not guilty and insists the charges were politically motivated by former President Biden. Tom Winter is joining us now. No evidence to support that, Tom, but let me bring you in because this has been a day of fast-moving developments, to say the least, including late tonight. So let me just start here. As of right now, 5:07 Eastern, have the charges against Adams been officially dropped?
Nope.
Okay. What happens next?
We don't know what happens next. We've never dealt with this before in New York. Among us crime reporters, we've never seen anything remotely like this. We've seen challenges before. We've seen back and forth before. We've seen drama, but it's not really drama for those of us that cover it every single day. This is entirely different. What you have had here, according to Danielle Sassoon, the acting U.S. attorney, well, at least until 1:50 p.m. today.
As of not anymore.
She called it a rushed and superficial decision, according to her letter to the Attorney General of the United States, that was done without her consult between Mayor Adams' attorneys and Emil Bovee. And the question here, Hallie, is why? There's really no good explanation other than perhaps what has been called a quid pro quo by her, which is basically, we'll help out, if you're Mayor Adams' team, we'll help out with the DOJ's enforcement priorities. Immigration is their stated enforcement priority, among other things, in exchange for dropping the case. And if you're Mayor Adams and you care about the public safety of New Yorkers, why not just work on the initial targets of the immigration actions, which are members of gangs, people that have been convicted of crimes, people that have been charged with serious violent crimes, to be able to deport those individuals? Here, it appears the focus has been entirely on his own legal matters.
Okay, I was pulling up, I can't get it right now on my computer, but I believe that it was Danielle Sassoon, I think, who also said that in this meeting at the end of January, and it may have been one of these other prosecutors, one of the folks that were in the meeting were taking notes that were ordered destroyed or collected after, right? I mean, like, is that normal that if a prosecutor's assistant is in the room taking notes, that those then get collected by the DOJ for having this like, what's normal and what's not?
Sure. So she brought somebody from the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, I don't know who that individual is, to take notes on this meeting. At the end of the meeting, they were admonished for taking notes, and Emil Bovee, who's the acting Deputy Attorney General of the United States, collected those notes according to her letter to the Attorney General. So, yes, that's exactly what happened. In her words, it should be noted that the assistants on this case have been put on leave and are now under investigation by the Office of the Attorney General of the United States, as well as the Office of Professional Responsibility. Their access to their offices has been immediately restricted. Their communications with the department, their cell phones, their laptops, et cetera, that access was immediately cut off. And so they're going to continue to get paid, but they're under investigation and inquiry at this time. This is something that we've just not seen before, and it's all because they did not follow the directive from the Deputy Attorney General, at least the acting Deputy Attorney General of the United States.
So who's in charge there now?
So who's in charge there right now is a huge question. You mentioned 2 other resignations. Those were the people at Public Integrity. So they're headquartered in Washington, D.C., where you're normally from. And so they're based there, and they also resigned when they were handed this case this afternoon. So who takes over this case? Who takes over the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, which oversees terrorism matters, which oversees all sorts of important cases that have nothing to do with all of this on a day-to-day basis? All remains a huge question right now. What is not a question, Hallie, is it's very clear. And if he was sitting here, if Emil Bovee was sitting right here, I'm confident he would say, the directives of this administration are the directives of this administration. Our priorities are our priorities. If you don't like it, either get in line or get out. And that's the message here today.
We talked about fast-moving developments. No kidding, because literally as you were talking, I was told, and I'm looking at my email, we just got a statement in literally the last 60 seconds from the attorney for Mayor Adams, for Eric Adams, responding to what you were just talking about, this allegation of a quid pro quo from the prosecutor who resigned. And I have to read it for folks. Eric Adams' attorney is saying the idea that there was a quid pro quo is a total lie. We offered nothing, and the department asked nothing of us. Going on to say, I don't know what amounted to means. We said we asked if the case had any bearing on national security and immigration enforcement, and we truthfully answered it did. So continuing to see this defense, of course, from Mayor Adams about what has gone down here.
You know, as far as he's certainly happy to make that statement, and he's certainly happy to obviously talk about his client. With respect to national security concerns, the mayor, whether or not he has classified any sort of classified access or not, or his credentials, ultimately, there are a lot of other people that are involved in the enforcement of any laws here in the city. And so how much the mayor's ability to do that, based on what I know about the plumbing of New York City law enforcement, doesn't exactly ring true to me.
Yeah.
Perhaps there's something I don't know, but I'm not sure if that's the case.
Tom Winter, don't go far, because at the pace of things today, I imagine there's going to be more to talk about in the hours to come. Thank you, friend. Appreciate you walking us through that. We got to take you out west, because tonight you've got extreme and potentially dangerous weather hitting California, with millions of people in that state facing flood threats right now. Look at this video. We just got it. A mudslide there, rushing down what used to be a neighborhood street. You can see the mud, some of the debris coming down with it. You've also got evacuation warnings in place for parts of L.A. that have been decimated by the wildfires there. We're talking the Pacific Palisades. We're talking Malibu. We're talking the risk ramping up for mudslides, for landslides. Officials are telling people, have your go bags ready. You got to be ready to get out if it gets worse. Up in the mountains, Californians there are bracing for something like 5 feet of snow in the Sierra Nevadas. Let's get to Steve Patterson, who's live for us in Malibu. This is exactly, Steve, what we have been talking about for the course of 3-4 days since the forecast came out for this torrential rain set to fall. The risk of landslides and mudslides in areas that have already been hammered, where you are.
Yeah, and it's not the first time we've spoken about it, Hallie. Remember, there was weather about a week and a half ago or so that did the exact same thing, sort of saturated the ground, making the potential for mudslides, for debris flows even worse. You may not be able to see it because visibility is now poor. It's been raining pretty hard. There's a giant burn scar here on a hill. If this slides down, it's the reason why this K railing is up. Officials really preparing for this. But if this comes down, it would hit us right in the roadway if this wasn't built. It's the reason why over here you see the sandbags trying to prevent this from happening to homes that are still intact. Obviously, this is still the burn zone, so many homes have been destroyed in this area. Officials are doing the best they can to protect what they can. And of course, it's annoying, it's traumatic for residents. Malibu schools closed once again. More than 100 homes evacuated in this area in the Pacific Palisades as well after the trauma of going through these horrific fires, now worried about mudslides, landslides, debris flows, worried about toxic chemicals getting into the ocean and on roadways. All of this a concern, and all of this is the function and focus of officials right now.
And this is like the cognitive dissonance here, because we're talking about the danger from this rain in an area that does generally need rain, right? They just don't need it. They don't need this much. They don't need this much this quickly.
Yeah, the problem is we do need rain, and it's great that we have rain. First of all, it puts out any smoldering that's remaining, saturating the ground, so we're out of this sort of drought, dry grass that we've had that catches so easily when a fire hits. But if it settles in a pocket like this, especially in a burn-scarred area, we've been talking about this, burn scars create this almost runway for moisture. It is much more saturated. It flows much faster, maybe 7 times faster. Does water flow down a burn scar than a regular vegetated hillside? It could flow anywhere from 20 to 35 miles per hour. This area, again, would just be covered in mud, a mess. And not only that, it's bad for the workers. Work's supposed to be transitioning right now from what's called phase 1, which is the hazardous debris removal, to phase 2, which is actually removing all of this debris that's been left over from these fires, hampering those efforts. They've had to pause that starting today. Hallie?
Steve Patterson live for us there in Malibu in California. Steve, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Back home in Washington, the nation's top health agency is bracing tonight for what could be some big changes after the Senate has now officially confirmed RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. Senator Mitch McConnell was the only Republican to vote against Kennedy, along with all the Democrats. The third time he has voted against one of President Trump's nominees. And Kennedy faced some opposition to get here, including from some other Senate Republicans, initially concerned about misinformation that RFK has spread before, especially on vaccines. Kennedy has been a noted anti-vax conspiracy theorist, saying things like, in his words, no vaccine is safe and effective, that they can cause autism. Again, these claims have no basis in science. NBC's Vaughn Hilliard is live for us on Capitol Hill. Big changes afoot for the nation's health agencies. We have been talking about this ever since the president indicated his inclination to nominate Kennedy for this position. And now here we are. He's been sworn in. The president has signed an executive order to make America healthy again, which was this movement that Kennedy embraced as he was going through his confirmation process.
Right. This is exactly what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. sought to do when he ran for president of the United States. And when he was considering dropping out, his then running mate openly said, well, he could see himself dropping out and endorsing Donald Trump in the scenario he were to get the nod to be HHS secretary. Well, that's what happened. And today, this afternoon, he was confirmed. As you said, Mitch McConnell, the only Republican not voting in favor of his confirmation. And when you look at his list of priorities, he's been quite explicit, not just in the last year during his run for president himself, but for decades now, right? He has talked openly about trying to eliminate fluoride from U.S. water supply, taking on processed foods and the ingredients that go into them. But of course, vaccine policy has been at the forefront of his work for decades now. And well, he suggested that he had made commitments to not remove any vaccines from the market or not to get in the way of newly developed vaccines from becoming available to Americans. At the same time, there are many Republican senators as well who openly were skeptical and questioning of those words because of his work to remove vaccines, including COVID vaccines, from the market over these last years.
There's also this dynamic where the federal workforce writ large is being slashed. That's the stated intention of President Trump. It was when he was on the campaign trail.
Right.
That's what Elon Musk wants to do, as he is now working with DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency there. And HHS, the nation's health agencies, presumably would be a part of that.
Right. And there's 13 health agencies, FDA, NIH, CDC. And NIH, for one, is already facing cuts for costs that go towards essentially grant programs that help universities and other institutions pay for staff, pay for equipment. And all of this has happened before he was confirmed. But people like Susan Collins, Republican senator from Maine, have spoken out of the impact that it's had on communities like hers in Maine. I want to let you listen also to Lisa Murkowski, Republican senator from Alaska, who voted to confirm him, but was very explicit in saying that he made commitments to her and others to continue to have ongoing conversations because of some of the concerns that they had about his potential leadership. Take a listen.
I think there are many of us who have asked for specific commitments, most specifically related to vaccines, and we want to be able to hold him accountable to that. So we're going to be checking him in, we're going to be calling him in, and we're going to be following through.
And that's where Democrats were frustrated, because once a nominee is confirmed, as Kennedy has, the level of oversight that Congress has at that point in time, it becomes much more questionable than it does on the front end of this. But Donald Trump, so far, the president, has successfully gotten each of his cabinet nominees now confirmed at this point in time, outside of Matt Gaetz, his original pick for Attorney General, who never actually came up for a vote, Hallie.
Vaughn Hilliard live for us back home on the Hill. Vaughn, thank you very much. Linda McMahon is also hoping to become the next cabinet official, or at least one of them in the Trump administration, even though the agency she would be tasked with leading is one that the president wants to dismantle. NBC's Rahema Ellis looks into what that could mean for students, for teachers, for parents across the country.
Linda McMahon, a longtime Trump supporter, serving as a cabinet member in his first term, the leader of the Small Business Administration, then a member of his transition team. So it's no surprise that he picked her for another cabinet post. But the surprise is what he wants her to do with it.
Put yourself out of a job.
Shutting down the Department of Education is a pledge Mr. Trump made throughout his campaign and as recently as yesterday.
I'd like it to be closed immediately. Look, the Department of Education's a big con job.
Today in confirmation hearings, McMahon saying she's determined to improve a, quote, system in decline.
We can do better. Fund education freedom, not government-run systems. Listen to parents, not politicians. Build up careers, not college debt.
On both sides of the aisle, she is credited for her business skills, creating an entertainment giant, World Wrestling Entertainment, with her husband, Vince McMahon. But she doesn't have a lot of education experience, with just a year-long stint on the School Board of Trustees for Sacred Heart University in Connecticut and the state's Board of Education back in 2009. And some wonder, what will she do for the nation's 50 million public school students who receive funding from the Department of Education, which the president is pushing to downsize with budget and staffing cuts?
To make sure we can deliver for our education.
Sparking outbursts today during the hearing.
The committee will come to order.
Some families are on edge. Carrie Rodriguez, the president of the National Parents Union, attending McMahon's hearing today. What are you hearing from parents?
A lot of fear. It's very destabilizing for families. The most important thing that we provide them is stability.
The Department of Education providing a roughly $80 billion budget that goes to K-12 public schools, protects students in high poverty districts, funds special ed, and advocates for students against sexual discrimination under Title IX.
Will you investigate those universities that are not complying with Title IX? Either they need to comply with the law, they need to follow the law of Title IX, they need to follow the rules issued by this administration, your department, or no federal funding.
We will make sure the law is enforced.
Trump plans to allocate that money elsewhere, pushing for school choice. Many agree that improvements are needed. As the DOE's recent Nations Report Card shows, students are still struggling to narrow the learning gap caused by the pandemic.
Folks should remember, the Department of Education in America really is a junior partner. Most of the money and the policy comes from the states or from local school districts.
It's true. The Department of Education provides only one of every $7 spent nationwide on education. However, some say its influence is powerful. Mike Petrilli, the president of the nonpartisan Thomas B. Fordham Institute, says this should be about centralizing leadership.
We need somebody who can use the bully pulpit to get the nation focused on those problems. But I think the Department of Education is very likely to be here 4 years from now.
Rahima is joining us now. It is so good to see you in person. Thank you. And it's nice to be in New York with you. Talk us through this, because you and I were just chatting about how you can't eliminate the Department of Education with the stroke of a pen. You can move its funding around. And that's going to make it potentially tricky, right, for parents, for students. Talk through where that money goes, how that would actually work.
That's what people are afraid of. For example, if you have children with disabilities who need education, there's talk about putting that money under the Department of Health and Human Services. So a parent would have to go to that department for assistance. If there are some civil rights violations within a school, the Department of Education has that component under the Department of Education umbrella. Well, that might go to the Department of Justice that people have to go to. So someone was talking about, this is like trying to buy a car. You want to just go to the dealer and get all of the different a car.
You want a car, a whole car.
You don't want to have to go wheels one place, a steering wheel someplace else, and somewhere else a seat, because it diminishes what you have to put together. So they're concerned about it. The question becomes one of, will they eliminate the whole department? It takes 60 votes in the Senate to eliminate a cabinet position. The Republicans have 53. So can they get rid of it completely? Maybe not, but they might be able to diminish the significance of it by reducing its effectiveness and by eliminating or reducing the funding to certain departments.
Rahima Ellis, it is definitely one to watch as we watch to see what happens with Linda McMahon, et cetera. Thank you, Rahima. It's good to see you. Appreciate it. We're learning more tonight about what police are calling a suspected attack in Munich, Germany, where a car slammed into a crowd. At least 28 people hurt. And look at this. Look at all the debris on the ground. Police were searching the car, obviously, and they arrested the 24-year-old driver on the scene. All of it happening less than a mile from where world leaders, including Vice President Vance, are gathering for the annual Munich Security Conference. You see it on the map here. This is just the latest car ramming incident in Germany. Remember, 5 people were killed and 200 hurt when a car drove into a crowd at a Christmas market back in December. I want to bring in now NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell. Andrea, you happened to be in Munich to cover the security conference, as is our colleague Courtney Kuby here. And then this attack happened. I know you raced to the scene. Exactly. What else do we know about the attack, the suspect, security at that conference, in the city, et cetera?
You know, it's just an extraordinary event happening just as this conference was about to convene, people arriving here. J.D. Vance arrived only hours later with his family from Paris. And then you had this attack, a car ramming into a crowd of some 15,000 people who were gathered to protest in favor of higher wages. So that appeared to be unrelated. But this man, they say, according to police, was from Afghanistan. He was seeking asylum. He was a legal resident. He had, they say, a criminal background in terms of drugs and thefts and some, quote, extreme tendencies. But they have so far not connected it to the security conference. But as you can imagine, hitting a soft target like this crowd of protesters on a completely unrelated issue, and just less than a mile from here, as you point out, has really created a sense of alert. Now, this security conference, Hallie, is always tightly secure. I've come here every year, as does our colleague Courtney Kuby, but this year, you can imagine it's going to be tighter than ever.
Yeah,
Hallie?
No kidding. Andrea Mitchell live for us there in Munich, Germany. More to talk about in the days to come on the actual outcome of the conference itself after that attack. Andrea, thank you very much. When we come back, why the pandemic, COVID, is making it harder to rely on cars, even one you may have just bought. And what the biggest names missing from the list of highest paid athletes in sports all have in common. President Trump's takeover of D.C.'s biggest art institution is just about complete. We've got the new resignations today in just a second. But first, Sportico, this big sports industry company, they're releasing today the list of the top 100 paid athletes. It's a lot of athletes, right? 100 of them who get paid the most money. But for the second year in a row, something's missing. Women. It does include players from 8 sports and 27 countries. And the top 5 highest paid, these folks are not going to surprise you, right? Cristiano Ronaldo, there's Steph Curry, LeBron. Total earnings include salary winnings. It also includes endorsements, by the way, from 2024. Top earning woman last year, U.S. tennis phenom Coco Gauff, you know who she is, raking in $30.4 million in earnings. But that puts her at like 107, right? $7 million off the number 100 highest paid athlete, Minnesota Vikings QB Daniel Jones. And this is even with the big gains that women's sports have made in recent years and months, especially in the WNBA, which announced their first expansion team in Toronto last year. They also signed a historic 11-year media rights deal worth around $200 million. Antonio Hilton is joining us now. 100 of the world's highest paid athletes and not a single woman on the list. I think it's objectively okay to say that's kind of a bummer.
It's definitely a bummer. Am I that surprised by the headline? No. I was surprised by some of the details, though.
Explain that.
So, like Coco Gauff, I would have thought maybe she made it at least onto the bottom of the list.
It includes endorsements, right? Like it's
Absolutely. And then Caitlin Clark. So our team reached out to Sportico to get some of the details. She's had an amazing year. We know that while WNBA salaries are low, you do actually get great endorsement deals when you have the career that she's starting to have right now. She wouldn't even make number 750 if they expanded this list. And so I was just shocked by I think the message, right, is just women's sports still have so far to go.
Yeah.
I think we have some sound, too, from one of the experts at Sportico breaking this down.
Part of the problem with women not qualifying in the top 100 is that higher barrier of entry at $37.5 million. The reality is that NWSL, WNBA, other professional women's sports leagues, they don't have nearly the salaries that can command that. So to rely on your sponsorship revenue to meet that threshold is nearly impossible.
And look, if she continues on her trajectory, Caitlin Clark will probably eventually get the chance to make this list. Women have been on it in the past. Look, we have seen Serena Williams making about $35 million back in 2022, and then Naomi Osaka with $53 million. So it's possible. Women make it up there, but not in the kind of numbers I think most women might like to see.
Well, it's so interesting, too, because I think one of the things that you often hear, and we on this show, as you know, have covered this disparity between men and women's sports quite a bit. People will point to the viewership numbers, right? That franchises like the NFL, right? Leagues like Major League Baseball, they outperform when it comes to viewers. Leagues like the WNBA, for example, even as the WNBA and others are trying to close that gap. That plays a part here, too, presumably.
It absolutely plays a part here. But look, women beat men on some nights over the past year, especially, again, when we're talking about
Caitlin Clark impact. We covered
her
it.
impact, Angel Reese.
Yep.
I mean, there's a generation coming up now that really has an opportunity to change the game here. But so long as the base salaries remain what they are, I mean, Caitlin Clark making an $100K about base salary, that's nothing to turn your nose up as an average American. But look, Cristiano Ronaldo might turn his nose up at that. And that is just a massive, massive gap when you're talking about a guy who's bringing in $260 million. I mean, women have a long way to go. Brands are going to be a huge part of this for them, but the leagues need to get behind them, too.
And Tony Hilton, we're so glad to have you on this one. Thank you. It's good to see you. Appreciate it. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Hamas says it'll release 3 more Israeli hostages Saturday after the group threatened a delay. The warning coming after Israel promised to launch new attacks in Gaza if Hamas did not follow through with that fragile ceasefire deal with its end of that. It looks like for now it is staying in place, but lots to watch this weekend. Number 2, Honda and Nissan say they're not actually going to go through with a $60 billion merger. The two companies had been looking at options and what would have been the world's 3rd biggest car maker if they had merged. The deal is reportedly now off because Honda wanted to make Nissan its subsidiary. Number 3, actress Issa Rae is canceling her sold-out show at the Kennedy Center just 24 hours after President Trump was made chair of the Performing Arts Center, bringing in a new board of trustees like Second Lady Usha Vance and White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. Rae says she's canceling because of, in her words, the infringement on the values of an institution that has faithfully celebrated artists of all backgrounds. NBC reached out to the Kennedy Center for comment, but we haven't heard back. Number 4, Joann Fabrics is closing about 500 stores as it files for bankruptcy. They've had slow sales, they've had some inventory shortages, which forced the company to file for Chapter 11 protection for the 2nd time in just 1 year. And number 5, the New York Jets say quarterback Aaron Rodgers is officially not coming back to the team next season. The Jets say they told Rodgers about this decision just last month. QB, you know, he's had a kind of tumultuous couple seasons with the team. NBC reached out to Rodgers about this, but no word yet. So a new report out today says newer cars are some of the least dependable cars we've seen in more than 15 years, at least according to J.D. Power, which found more problems with cars that are just 3 years old, saying it has a lot to do with after effects from the pandemic, specifically as it related to car production. They say there's a few big factors driving down dependability. Software defects. So that's like bugs or issues with CarPlay or Android Auto. There's issues with plug-in hybrids, for example, with some of those 2022 models trying to improve on their predecessors. CNBC's Phil LeBeau is following this for us. So is this surprising to you? Did car experts expect the results like that we're seeing here, or what's the sense here?
Not surprising. Okay. And if you look back at 2020 and 2021, when these vehicles were built, in the heart of the pandemic, I remember doing a number of stories where we would talk with automakers about manufacturing at their plants around the United States. The biggest concern, obviously, was to keep the employees safe. They were masked. They were distanced. It's only natural that those added impediments, if you will, could ultimately show up in terms of the quality of the vehicles. Now, I should say this, Hallie, keep in mind that when you look at the top brands, when you look at the top models, and these are ranked by the people who drive these vehicles as having the least problems, it tends to be the same brands year in, year out. And that's what we're seeing again this year. And so I know people will sit there and say 15-year low. The quality of a 2009 vehicle is far better than the quality that we saw in the mid-90s. So it's not like we see a bunch of jalopies out on the road.
So that was my next question, right? Was like the current models, if you're looking at 24, 25, 26, should we feel better if you're looking to buy a new car now about those and the older ones?
Theoretically, we should, and it also depends on the type of vehicle that you're buying. Take, for example, the problems reported with plug-in electric hybrid vehicles. You're asking manufacturers to be good at making internal combustion engines, which is part of a plug-in electric hybrid vehicle, as well as the plug-in and the electric vehicle components. That's a lot of complexity within a vehicle, and that's why you see some complaints in that area. So I think overall the industry looks at a report like this and says, okay, that's 1 year. I think it probably gets better next year.
Phil LeBeau, thank you very much for breaking that down for us. Appreciate it. Coming up here on the show, the final word from A$AP Rocky's lawyers in their push to keep him out of prison, why Rocky decided not to testify. Plus, a Utah driver's escape from oncoming traffic. Oh, that is so scary after he blew past this railroad crossing. A modern-day sequel to The Miracle on 34th Street. We'll explain in just a sec. But first, right as we were coming on the air, A$AP Rocky's defense told jurors the key witness in this assault trial cannot be trusted. As we're getting a glimpse today of another key figure in this case. We are talking about Rocky's longtime partner and the mother of his kids, Rihanna. That's her, leaving court earlier with one of her children. Clearly not a key figure in the case, but a key figure in Rocky's life. Inside court during closing arguments, the big question that both the prosecution and defense have told the jury they've got to answer. Did A$AP Rocky use a real gun or a fake gun to shoot at somebody who used to be his friend? Prosecutor says you got to look to the testimony of one man, Jarrell Efron, also known as A$AP Relly. He's the one prosecutors say Rocky shot outside a Hollywood hotel back in 2021 during this argument. You can see it's obviously partially caught on surveillance footage. Danny Savalos is joining us now. And Danny, you are intrigued by the theory of the case here from the defense, which is that they're basically saying not a real gun, or they're saying you can't prove it's a real gun.
Very good point. Yes, exactly. And you just saw that quote up there where the prosecutor says, all you have to decide is whether this is a real gun or a fake gun. Not so fast. That is not the way the burden works. Instead, the way I would phrase it, if I had gotten up for the defense, and probably I couldn't have because the prosecution goes last, I would have said, no, that's not how it works. You, the government, you must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this was a semi-automatic firearm. If you believe it was anything other than that, or that the government didn't prove it, then you must acquit. And they don't have the firearm. As long as they believe it's anything other, and that the prosecution didn't meet their burden, they could think it's a potato. They don't need. It doesn't matter what they think it is. It matters what the government proved beyond a reasonable.
They're trying to basically say that this former friend is simply trying to get money out of Rocky. Like that's what they're saying, right? That he basically said so in text and phone calls, et cetera. Is that enough, along with this gun potential question, to create reasonable doubt in the mind of a jury, in your view?
It's helpful. It's not the key piece of evidence, because what you need to focus on, the government's burden. The state must prove that this is not just any firearm, a semi-automatic firearm, and they don't have it. What you often do as a defense attorney is you make the decision to develop your own theory of the case. And they've done this very well here by calling witnesses, number one, to say it was a fake gun, very helpful, but also motive. Hey, this is a guy. Why would he lie? Well, we're answering that question for you. We don't have the burden to prove anything as the defense, but we're going to go ahead and prove that he had this motive to lie, and that's why he's here. That's why all of you are here, members of the jury.
One of the things that you and I have talked about in the course of other trials over the past several years has been this, I don't want to call it a trend, but we've seen a reoccurrence of high-profile defendants taking the stand to testify on their own behalf. As a defense attorney, you often say, boy, that's a risky move. And in this instance, A$AP Rocky did not take the stand. He ended up not testifying. What do you make of that?
Yeah, Hallie, I've been beating this drum for years, and I know you know that. In the last few years, we've seen a lot of high-profile criminal defendants take the stand, bucking the traditional wisdom that you never, ever put your client on the stand. Don't get me wrong. That traditional wisdom still works. And sometimes you have a client, you meet with him, maybe you even talk about it, and you just make that decision. He'll never make it on the stand. Some people just can't do it. They may be smart in other aspects of their life, but when you get in there, the rules are skewed against a criminal defendant, and they're skewed in favor of the prosecutor, who can devastate you with cross-examination, leading questions. Everything is geared towards the prosecution when you call your client to the stand. So it still remains the general rule that you don't take the stand if you absolutely positively can't get that evidence from any other place than the mouth of your client. Maybe you put him on the stand. But generally, that rule still exists.
We showed the picture, the image of Rihanna, of course, A$AP Rocky's partner. She actually came up a lot during jury selection. To be clear, she is not officially a part of this case. She has nothing to do with the matter at hand here. Of course, she is with Rocky. How does, if at all, that play into any of this? Or is that done now that the jury's been picked?
Reportedly, she apparently entered the courtroom with her 2 children in the beginning or during the prosecutor's closing statement. I honestly wondered if that was almost close to contempt. It was so, to me, appeared to be so manufactured, so choreographed, and brilliant. Look, if you're the defense, I can see someone in there saying, okay, now come in.
Send her in, right.
Send her in.
We
The
don't know
prosecution
that's what
just
happened.
started. We don't know. I want to make clear, I'm just pure conjecture time here. But if I were strategizing, it was either a brilliant piece of strategy or an amazingly beneficial coincidence.
Danny Savalos, lots to watch. Timeline is just TBD, right? It's now in the hands of the jury. Who knows how long it'll take?
And most juries don't take as long as people. The week-long deliberation is really a thing of myth. They'll be back relatively soon.
And so will you, Danny. Thank you. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day. And because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Western Bureau, take a look at this. Ugh, you hate to see it. This driver caught on surveillance cameras trying to back up, but then look, jumps out of his car, can't get back far enough. He's blurred there, but he jumps out of his car, runs just seconds before that train comes smashing through. This is it from the conductor's perspective. Ooh, destroying the car. Fortunately and amazingly, nobody was hurt. Out of our Northeast Bureau, a Florida woman who's reportedly been missing since last September has just been found after giving birth to a baby girl on the subway here in New York in Midtown. You see these people jumping on the train to help. The mother and the baby were taken to the hospital. Both are expected to be okay. Also out of our Midwest Bureau, A.J. Brown, from the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, visiting the 10-year-old boy who shielded his sister from that air ambulance crash in Philly a couple weeks ago. The NFL star is now calling the boy Andre Howard III a hero. Howard got emergency brain surgery after the crash. According to his family, he's already recovering. In what they say has just been a miraculous situation. Brown says that young boy, that little kiddo, helped give the Eagles motivation to bring home that Super Bowl victory. Just awesome to see. Coming up after the break, why health experts worry a measles outbreak in one Texas county may be way worse than we know right now. Tonight, health officials are reporting a spike in measles cases with infections confirmed in at least 6 states so far this year, including the latest outbreak, one we've covered on this show this week in Texas, near the border of New Mexico. By the way, one case there has also been reported. And here's the deal. 24 cases so far in Gaines County, mostly in school-aged kids, all of them unvaccinated. But experts think that the actual number may be far higher than 24, that it may actually be in the hundreds. At least 9 of these patients are in the hospital right now. Measles is super contagious, and in some instances, it can be deadly. Our Erica Edwards has made her way to Gaines County, Texas. She is joining us now from there. Huge concern because of how contagious measles is, how quickly it spreads, the impact it can have, and the fact that they think there may be many, many more people, exponentially more people than currently reported, who are grappling with this.
Yeah, that's right. You mentioned that 24 confirmed cases, known cases so far, but health officials here on the ground are telling me that they estimate the true number of measles cases is more like 200 to 300 cases, and that's because it is so contagious. You can walk into a room 2 hours after somebody with measles has been there, and if you're unvaccinated, you can then become infected yourself. A lot of people in this community don't believe in the vaccine because of their religious beliefs. They don't believe in getting tested. I talked with one mom, local mom here today, who has a special needs child who cannot get vaccinated and therefore is at risk for complications of the measles if she were to be infected. I asked, how are you dealing with this? And she said they're just hunkering down just like the early days of COVID.
We're all scared, and a lot of the special needs kiddos, they have devices in their body. If they're sick, they're not just normal sick. They get encephalitis. We're going to have to rally around each other and help each other through this time.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the age breakdown of those 24 cases so far. 2 have been in adults. The vast majority, as you said, Hallie, have been between the ages of 5 and 17, but 6 have been in kids younger than age 4. Hallie, today I witnessed a mom come to this testing site behind me and get her 2-month-old baby swabbed for measles.
Man.
Hallie?
And that reference is, I was going to ask you what's behind you there. It is a mobile testing site, correct? Have you seen some decent foot traffic there?
Yeah, this is a mobile testing site here right in Gaines County. They've been getting about maybe 8 to 10 people every day coming here this week. They might actually, stay another week if the need is there. Right now, you're seeing this was a van that came in earlier with at least 8 children in it. All were being tested for measles. I talked with the young mom. She said that one of her children had a fever of up to 103. This is a very sort of tight-knit, rural, small community.
Yeah.
And there still is a lot of mistrust. I talked with one of the doctors who's been treating the kids in the hospital about an hour away from here in Lubbock. She said that she's still dealing with a lot of mistrust.
Also,
of disinformation. There's a lot of information out there about vaccines and vaccine preventable illnesses that just isn't true. Obviously, parents are going to make a lot of decisions for their kids, and we want to try to help them understand the facts so that they can make the best decisions possible.
Now, adding to the problem here is that there is also quite a significant language barrier. The folks in the community that's being affected right now mostly speak a specific dialect of German called Low German. And so just basic communication is also proving to be quite a challenge. Hallie?
It also appears like it could be one of the first tests for now Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who was sworn in today, of course, as the new health secretary.
Yeah, and and pediatricians I've talked with are concerned that there could be some influence over vaccines. Kennedy, of course, as HHS head, is over the CDC, which we know makes vaccine recommendations. Their first meeting of that vaccine committee is here in the next couple of weeks, so we will be paying attention.
Erica Edwards live for us down there in Gaines County, Texas. Erica, thank you very much. When we come back here on the show, the $10 million check, Elon Musk's company, one of them, is cutting to President Trump. So where's that cash going? We are learning X, of course, owned by Elon Musk, is agreeing to settle a lawsuit related to President Trump's account suspension on the platform, according to a source familiar with the matter, for a price tag of $10 million. Paid for by the company of the world's richest man, who's also in charge of this huge cost-cutting, staff-cutting push inside the government. Now, remember, take you back down memory lane. This was after the January 6th attack on the Capitol, when Mr. Trump sued X. At the time, it was known as Twitter. And he sued its then CEO for taking him off the platform. He was taken off a number of platforms, including Meta, for example, Facebook. Twitter said it made that decision at the time because there was a risk the president could incite more violence related to his push to overturn the legitimate 2020 election. George Solis is happening now. And this is part and parcel. It is newsworthy and interesting in and of itself. A $10 million settlement from Elon Musk's company to the president, as we're seeing these images, right, even today, of Musk in the Oval Office, in the sort of inner part of the White House with the president, but also in the arc of where these tech titans are when it comes to the president and his White House.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. I mean, when you look at the president's inner circle, specifically when you're talking about powerful CEOs, it seems that he has a lot of people around him besides Elon Musk. I mean, if you look at the list there, just including those that were at the inauguration, you have Jeff Bezos, you have Mark Zuckerberg, you have the CEO of Google, you have Tim Cook, of course, you have Xiao Chu from TikTok. So obviously that circle, very, very powerful. It's a point of a lot of discussion. Another thing to note outside of this settlement, Trump has been on Twitter since 2022. That's when he was reinstated. So in a way, just settling this lawsuit, it's really just, in some cases, just really ceremonial. But when you talk about other lawsuits that he's also settled, Meta, Facebook settled with him for $25 million. So again, not really unique in a sense of what's been happening. And Mr. Trump's presence on X hasn't really been all that different, if you will. I mean, what he's really posting now is just retweets or reposts from Truth Social, as opposed to that initial real launch of those posts on X or Twitter as it was at the time, and some of those tweets that were grabbing headlines and some of the declarations he was making. But again, when you just look at the big picture here of all these people, all these CEOs that are in his inner circle now, you have to really wonder and look at is this just sort of the start, the beginning of more of these types of decisions, more control, more? It really just kind of opens the door for a lot of speculation at this point. But obviously, as you mentioned, the headline today, that $10 million that he settled with on X, how that gets used and how this kind of plays out into the bigger picture, of course, remains to be seen.
George Solis, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. That does it for us for this hour. I will see you Sunday on Nightly News and right back here Monday on NBC News Now. We've got more coverage picking up right now. We are coming on the air with President Trump set to take questions at a news conference from the White House very soon after more trade back and forth. A new tit for tat announcing what he's calling reciprocal tariffs as that leader of India is in town, a man that President Trump has called the tariff king. We're live at the White House with why it's such a big deal for the two to stand side by side. Also new tonight, new details and new reaction from New York City's mayor after not one, not two or three or four or five, but 6 members of the Justice Department, prosecutors, are resigning after refusing to drop his corruption case. Then we're going to take you live to California, where we're getting new video of mudslides threatening some of the same spots. Look at this, where we saw deadly wildfires just weeks ago. Plus, the country's brand new health secretary is promising some big changes. Why most Republicans today fell in line behind Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as he continues a Kennedy family dynasty. Plus, why some cars aren't running as well as they should these days and what the COVID pandemic has to do with it. That's a little bit later on in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and in a little bit at the White House, maybe any minute, we're expecting to see President Trump side by side with the Prime Minister of India for what's called in D.C. speak a 2-and-2. That's a little lingo for you there. I mean, I know you know it. This is a live shot here. That's where we expect to see the two of them. And this is a big deal for a number of reasons, right? It's an opportunity for members of the press to get questions to President Trump, but also to Narendra Modi, right, the Prime Minister of India, who rarely faces the press back home. We're going to bring this to you live when it happens. The two have already taken a couple of questions, including on India, on China, and importantly, on trade. Watch.
If you're going to be tough with India on trade, how are you going to beat China then?
We're in very good shape to beat anybody we want, but we're not looking to beat anybody. We're looking to do a really good job.
I want to get right to Gabe Gutierrez, who is live for us now in the White House, to lay it all out, because, Gabe, we expect this could start any minute here. What's the biggest thing you're watching for as President Trump could face a number of questions on a slew of issues?
A number of questions indeed, Hallie. You mentioned this was what's known as a 2-and-2. Well, President Trump, of course, likely to take many more questions, as he has done really throughout the day, speaking to reporters multiple times in the Oval Office. Now, you mentioned the visit from India's Prime Minister. Of course, we've been seeing him throughout the afternoon. Senior administration officials telling us they want to work on a defense framework with India. And this is so crucial, Hallie, because of the relationship with India to stave off China in the Indo-Pacific. And that is something that the Trump administration is putting a very high priority on. Now, this all comes as President Trump today also announced what he calls reciprocal tariffs. Essentially, the administration trying to lay out what they believe will be an even playing field when it comes to trade really around the world. But, Hallie, there are just so many questions, not just with the U.S.'s relationship with India, but, of course, what is happening with ongoing the peace negotiations set to start tomorrow regarding Ukraine. The president speaking earlier today about that, saying that he does not plan to cut out Ukraine from these negotiations, that they will have a seat at the table. However, he is facing some backlash from the European Union, also from President Zelensky himself, who were frankly shocked at the president's phone call yesterday with Russian President Vladimir Putin. So a lot to watch for, Hallie, again, regarding trade, regarding the Russia-Ukraine war, and then certainly a lot of domestic priorities as well, the reshaping of the federal government. The president also expected to take questions about that too, Hallie.
Gabe Gutierrez, who is in the room where it's happening, as we're taking a look there at some of those Trump administration cabinet officials who have gathered. I imagine we are getting closer and closer to this news conference. Gabe, we'll be checking back in with you after. We're going to carry it obviously right here live on NBC News Now. Yamiche Alcindor is outside the White House as Gabe is taking his seat quietly, as you have to do when you're in the room. And Yamiche, our team spoke with one top Trump trade official from his first term who specializes in this region, who says this meeting has less to do with India and more to do with China. Can you pull on that thread? Because that is also going to be likely a theme of what we're all going to be listening to here over the course of the next couple of minutes during this news conference.
Well, certainly top of mind for President Trump, as well as really, frankly, a number of other presidents that came before him, were the standing of the United States economically when it comes to sort of world domination and world standing in relation to China, which is also, of course, seen as our really biggest competitor, especially when it comes to the economic realm. And it's really interesting today, as President Trump was rolling out his reciprocal tariffs, as he calls them, it was clear that it wasn't just about sort of what tariffs are actually on the table when it comes to which countries have their percentages, but he also said that he's going to be taking into consideration what countries are devaluing their money. And that is something that was a big theme of his first administration. He constantly was talking about China devaluing its money. So it's interesting to think that he could be using that as a way to roll out an even higher tariff on China. We already know he has that 10% tariff that he rolled out, which of course he didn't do for Canada and Mexico. When he paused them, China didn't get that pause. So very interesting to see what he does there. But also India has really been trying to, I think, keep the vibes good here and in terms of trade, and definitely wants to be seen as trying to be sort of helpful to President Trump as he has his goal on tariffs and trade here.
Yamiche, thank you very much. We're going to take you live now to the White House, where we are expecting this news conference. You see the president and the prime minister there. Let's listen in.
Narendra Modi, back to the White House. We spent a lot of time here and a lot of time in India, and he's a very special man. Prime Minister, it is a pleasure to extend to you the same hospitality that you showed Melania and myself when we traveled to your beautiful country 5 years ago. It's hard to believe, so long ago, and it seemed like yesterday. It was beautiful. We opened the cricket stadium, 129,000 seats, I think the largest stadium in the world, and it was an incredible period of time. There is truly a special bond between the United States and India, and the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest democracy. And I believe the world's largest country in terms of the numbers of people. And today the Prime Minister and I are announcing a framework to strengthen those ties even further economically. And the U.S.-India Compact for the 21st century is a historic initiative that will deepen every aspect of our partnership and our friendship. Starting this year, we'll be increasing military sales to India by many billions of dollars. We're also paving the way to ultimately provide India with the F-35 stealth fighters. In 2017, my administration revived and reinvigorated the Quad security partnership. And our meeting today, the Prime Minister and I reaffirmed that strong cooperation among the United States, India, Australia, and Japan. And it's crucial, really, to maintaining peace and prosperity, tranquility, even in the Indo-Pacific. In addition, the United States and India will be working together like never before to confront the threat of radical Islamic terrorism, a threat all over the world, actually. Today, I'm pleased to announce that my administration has approved the extradition of one of the plotters and one of the very evil people of the world, and having to do with the horrific 2008 Mumbai terrorist attack, to face justice in India. So he's going to be going back to India to face justice. As we deepen our defense partnership, we'll also strengthen our economic ties and bring greater fairness and reciprocity to our trading relationship. As a signal of good faith, Prime Minister Modi recently announced the reductions to India's unfair, very strong tariffs that limit U.S. access into the Indian market very strongly. And really, it's a big problem, I must say. India imposes a 30 to 40 to 60 and even 70% tariff on so many of the goods, and in some cases far more than that. And as an example, a 70% tariff on U.S. cars going into India, which makes it pretty much impossible to sell those cars. Today, the U.S. Trade deficit with India is almost $100 billion. And Prime Minister Modi and I have agreed that we'll begin negotiations to address the long-running disparities that should have been taken care of over the last 4 years, but they didn't do that, in the U.S.-India trading relationship, with the goal of signing an agreement. And we want, we want a certain level playing field, which we really think we're entitled to. And he does also, in fairness. So we're going to work on that very hard, and we can make up the difference very easily with the deficit, with the sale of oil and gas, LNG, of which we have more than anybody in the world. The Prime Minister and I also reached an important agreement on energy that will restore the United States as a leading supplier of oil and gas to India. It will be hopefully their #1 supplier, in the groundbreaking development for U.S. nuclear industry. India is also reforming its laws to welcome U.S. nuclear technology, which is at the highest level, into the Indian market. This will bring safe, clean, and affordable electricity to millions of Indians and tens of billions of dollars to the U.S. civilian nuclear industry in India. And under the framework we are announcing today, the United States and India are also joining forces to ensure that artificial intelligence and other advanced technologies are developed by two of the most advanced nations, intellectually and otherwise technologically. Anywhere in the world, there's nobody very much closer. We have an incredible relationship there, and this is where it seems to be heading. And artificial intelligence, a very complex subject, but it seems to be where people want to be and they want to go. And we're leading right now by a lot, but other people will try to catch us. I don't know if they're going to be able to. We're going to make it available. We're going to make tremendous amounts of electricity available. We're going to let the people that are buying the electricity make their own electric plants, electric generation plants. And we've never done this in our country, but we're going to get it done very quickly. Lee Zeldin and his group are going to get the approvals in very rapid form. And we're calling it a national emergency, and that's exactly what it is. So we're going to remain at the top of the AI, or artificial intelligence, I think, for a long time to come. And we're going to be working very closely with India and other countries on that. But right now, we're the leader by quite a bit. Finally, we agreed to work together to help build one of the greatest trade routes in all of history. It will run from India to Israel to Italy and onward to the United States, connecting our partners by ports, railways, and undersea cables, many, many undersea cables. It's a big development. It's a lot of money going to be spent, and we've already spent some, but we're going to be spending a lot more in order to stay advanced and stay the leader. I'm pleased to report that with today's announcements, the friendship between the United States and India is the strongest I believe it's ever been. I think our relationship is the best it's ever been between two leaders of the two countries, and it's an honor to say that. I'd like to now invite the Prime Minister to say a few words, and then we'll take some questions, and we appreciate you all being here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, President Trump, delegates of both countries, friends from the media, Namaskar. I would like to, first of all, express my heartfelt gratitude to my dear friend, President Trump, for the grand welcome and hospitality accorded to me. President Trump's leadership has been instrumental in nurturing India-US ties and making them vibrant. I could feel today the same enthusiasm, the same enthusiasm, the same energy, the same commitment that we had worked with during our first term. Our discussions today highlighted our pride in our accomplishments during his first term, the deep mutual trust that we share, and also the resolve to attain new goals. We also agreed that the partnership and cooperation between India and the US can shape a better world. Friends, the people of America are aware of President Trump's motto, "Make America Great Again," or MAGA. The people of America are well aware of it. The people of India, too, are focusing on both heritage and development as they move forward at a fast pace and with a firm resolve to ensure a developed India by 2047. If I were to say this, borrowing an expression from America, our vision for a developed India is to make India great again, or MEGA. When America and India work together, that is, when it's MAGA plus MEGA, it becomes MEGA, a mega partnership for prosperity. And it is this mega spirit that gives new scale and scope to our objectives. Friends, today, we have also set ourselves the target of more than doubling our bilateral trade to attain $500 billion by 2030. Our teams will work on concluding very soon a mutually beneficial trade agreement. In order to ensure India's energy security, we will focus on trade in oil and gas. Investment in energy infrastructure will also increase. In the area of nuclear energy, we also discussed increasing cooperation on small modular reactors. Friends, America plays an important role in India's defense preparedness. As strategic and trusted partners, we are moving forward actively towards joint development, joint production, and transfer of technology. In the times to come as well, new technologies and equipment will enhance our capacities.
We have decided to launch the Autonomous Systems Industry Alliance, and a defense cooperation framework for the next decade will be prepared. Defense interoperability, logistics, repair, and maintenance will also be its key components. Friends, the 21st century is a technology-driven century. Close cooperation in the area of technology between countries that believe in democratic values can give new direction, strength, and opportunities to the entire humanity. India and the US will jointly work in areas of artificial intelligence, semiconductors, quantum, biotechnology, and several other technologies. Today, we also agreed on trust, which stands for transforming relationships utilizing strategic technology. Under this, our focus will be on establishing strong supply chains for critical minerals, advanced materials, and pharmaceuticals. We have also decided to launch a recovery and processing initiative for strategic minerals like lithium and rare earths. We have had close cooperation with the U.S. in the area of space. The NISAR satellite, developed with mutual cooperation between ISRO and NASA, will soon be flying into space on an Indian launch vehicle. Friends, partnership between India and the U.S. strengthens democracy and strengthens democratic values and systems. We will work together to enhance peace, stability, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. The Quad will play a special role in this. During the Quad Summit, scheduled to be held in India this year, we will expand cooperation in new areas with our partner countries. Under the IMEC and I2U2, we will work together for the development of economic corridors and in the area of connectivity. India and U.S. will stand strongly together in the fight against terrorism. We agree that in order to eliminate cross-border terrorism, we need concrete actions. And I'm very grateful to President Trump that he, in 2008, somebody who carried out genocide in India, that criminal is now going to be handed over to India, and I'm grateful to President Trump for this. And appropriate action will be taken in the courts in India. Friends, the Indian community living in the U.S. is an important link in our relations. In order to further deepen our people-to-people ties, India will soon open new consulates in Los Angeles and Boston. These will be new consulates. We have invited American universities and educational institutes to open their offshore campuses in India. President Trump, I am grateful to you for your friendship and strong commitment towards India. The people of India still fondly remember your visit in 2020 and hope that President Trump will come and visit them again. On behalf of 1.4 billion Indians, I invite you to visit India. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Beautiful. Okay, thank you very much. That was excellent. We'll do a few questions, please. Please, go ahead. Please, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, blue shirt.
Thank you, Mr. President. People in India will naturally welcome your decision to extradite Thakur Rana to India back home. In that context, I would like to ask you a question about, in the last few years, we have seen several groups in the U.S. raising anti-India voice, calling about separation, terrorism activities in India. Do you think that should continue here in the U.S. as well?
You're going to have to go louder.
Mr. President, people in India would be welcoming your decision to extradite Thakur Rana to...
I can't understand a word he's saying.
May I, sir? May I? May I, sir?
Go ahead, back there.
Mr. President, thank you. First, I want to ask the Prime Minister a question. You and the President, you both spoke about combating ISIS. You both sounded very excited about this partnership upcoming. And I was curious, how much more confident are you with President Trump leading this country that there will be peace through strength and you will have a successful partnership with the United States versus with Biden's incompetence and weakness over the last 4 years?
That's your question, but I'll answer it. I agree with you. Yeah, gross incompetence. We're going to have a fantastic relationship, and it has been. Look, the whole world's been set back over the last 4 years by the weakness of the United States, the weak leadership of the United States. But I think we've taken care of it in just 3 weeks. It seems to me that even some of the media that we wouldn't prefer has been writing that this is a much different country right now, that the world has a light over it, not only our country, but the whole world. The Prime Minister told me that before, too, even over India. The world has a light. They need the United States to be strong and powerful, but good. And I think that's happened, and I think it's happened in a very short period of time. But I will tell you, we're going to have a fantastic relationship, and it'll make both countries much stronger. Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, Geeta Mohan from India Today, sir. I'll just take my colleague Lalit Jha's question forward because you couldn't understand.
Okay, fine.
The question is about the fact that you've decided to extradite Tahabur Rana. Thank you so much. India has been waiting to have him back in India to bring him to justice. But there are many other elements in the United States of America, particularly Khalistani separatists who've been working against Indian interests. How is the United States of America going to cooperate on that front with India? There have been allegations that have been leveled against Indian agencies by the Biden administration. Are you going to relook that with Tulsi Gabbard as DNI now?
Well, I don't think India had a very good relationship with the Biden administration. They wouldn't sell them oil and gas, which is rather hard to believe because, it's a good thing to do. And a lot of things happened that weren't very appropriate, I thought, between India and the administration, the Biden administration. But as you said, we're giving a very violent man, it seems to me. I mean, I don't know that he's been convicted yet or will be, but let's assume he's a pretty violent person. We're giving him back to India immediately. And there are more to follow because we have quite a few requests. So we work with India on crime. And we want to make it good for India, and it's very important. So that kind of a relationship is very important to us. Okay? Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. President, you've repeatedly called India a big abuser of trade and said it is really difficult to do business in India because of tariffs. You announced reciprocal tariffs today. I am hoping you can speak about what kind of reciprocal tariffs India can expect. Are you willing to make any concessions? And how can India head off these tariffs? I also have one for the Prime Minister.
Well, India's been, to us, just about the highest tariffed nation anywhere in the world. They've been very strong on tariffs, and I don't blame them necessarily, but it's a different way of doing business. It's very hard to sell into India because they have trade barriers, very strong tariffs. We are right now a reciprocal nation. We are going to, if it's India or if it's somebody else with low tariffs, we're going to have the same. We're going to have whatever India charges, we're charging them. Whatever another country charges, we're charging them. So it's called reciprocal, which I think is a very fair way. We didn't have that. I was going to do that in my other term, and we had the greatest economy ever in the world. There's never been an economy like we had, and then we got hit with COVID. We had to focus on that, and I wasn't really in the mood to be putting it on Italy and Spain and France and India, frankly, and a lot of other countries because the world was very troubled until we got rid of that nightmare. But we had the strongest economy anywhere in the world during that fairly long period of time during my first term, as you know, and we didn't do the tariffs. We would have done the reciprocal tariffs, but we decided, and I decided, I think on a human basis, on a humane basis, not to do them because of the fact that there was such suffering all over the world. The last thing we needed to talk about is trade problems. But now we do. We're doing, we see a tremendous future for our country, but we felt that now it's finally time, after 45 or 50 years of abuse, that we will do, and this isn't India, this is among a lot of nations. The European Union is very difficult for us, very, very difficult. They tax our companies at levels that nobody's ever seen before. They take advantage of a lot of things, so we're not happy about that. China, of course, is terrible, and we've never taken in 10 cents until I was president. We've taken in hundreds of billions of dollars from China since I've been president in first term and now. And we have to do that just as a mechanism of fairness. And that's what I've done. And so we are being reciprocal with India. Whatever India charges, we charge them. So frankly, it no longer matters to us that much what they charge, because whatever they charge, I had discussions with India in the first term about the fact that their tariffs were very high, and I was unable to get a concession. So we're just going to do it the easy way, and we're just going to say whatever you charge, we charge. And I think that's fair for the people of the United States, and I think it's actually fair for India. Okay?
To make any concessions, sir? Are you willing to make any concessions, sir? Any concessions?
Go ahead, please. Ask to the
A
Prime
question
Minister,
for the
please.
Prime Minister, please.
Ask to the Prime Minister, please.
Yes. Sorry. Yoshita Singh with Press Trust of India. Prime Minister, thank you, Mr. President. Prime Minister, the U.S. is giving a lot of push to curb illegal immigration, and India has been cooperating on this issue. How does India see this issue in the larger context? Thank you.
I don't think this is a question that is about India only, but even globally you can talk about this issue. And we are of the opinion that anybody who enters another country illegally, they have absolutely no right to be in that country. And as far as India and the U.S. is concerned, we have always been of the same opinion, and that is that any verified Indian who is in the U.S. illegally, we are fully prepared to take them back to India. However, it doesn't stop there. These are children of very ordinary families, and they are lured by big dreams and big promises. A lot of them are brought in without them knowing about why they're going to a country. And in fact, they are connected with a human trafficking system, and we have to make sure that we fight against this system. As far as the U.S. and India is concerned, I think what we should do is make efforts to make sure that we uproot these from within the system so that we can reduce or remove human trafficking. And basically, the young, vulnerable, poor people of India are fooled into coming over as illegal immigrants. And our bigger fight actually is against this ecosystem or this system that encourages such gangs to thrive. And I can tell you that India will completely support your endeavor in achieving this.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. The question for the Prime Minister Modi first, if I may. I wanted to ask you, did you discuss any possible business deals with Elon Musk during your meetings today, Mr. Prime Minister? And Mr. President, I wanted to ask you, today you spoke about hoping to have three-way talks with President Xi and President Putin. What would you say to European leaders and other allies who may be concerned that you're apparently more keen to speak to America's adversaries than to its allies? Thank you.
Well, maybe I'll just go in first on this one. We had some talks, and we told the European Union. We told the NATO people, largely they overlap, you have to pay more money because it's unfair what we're doing. We're doing a tremendous amount more. We're probably $200 billion more going into Ukraine, using for Ukraine to fight. And Europe has not really carried its weight in terms of the money. It's not equitable. And we want to see a counterbalance. We want to have them put up more money. They have to do that. At the same time, we had a very good conversation with President Putin yesterday, and we also had a very good conversation. I did in both cases with President Zelensky. And I think we're going to be able to do something. I think we're going to be able to make a deal. And I hope so, because it's a horrible war. It's a very terrible, bloody war with 1.5 million soldiers at least already dead on the battlefield, lying all over the fields like nobody's ever seen anything like it, certainly since the Second World War. And so I think we're going to be able to do something. We're working with President Zelensky and with President Putin. And my impression is that I know that President Zelensky wants to make a deal. And I also feel that I know that President Putin wants to make a deal. I wanted to know that before I began any detailed discussions. But the meeting and the conversation, also the meeting with Steve Witkoff in Moscow, was a very successful one. And my phone call with him was a very successful one. Please.
You asked a question regarding Elon Musk. I have known him for a very long time. I was not even a prime minister at the time when I first met him. I was chief minister. And today he came to meet me along with all his family, with his children. And so we had a nice discussion. As far as the EV is concerned, EVs are concerned, the word EV has a copyright, and that is one person who has a copyright for the word EV, and that is Trump.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I ask whether you discussed at all today the case of Gautam Adani, who's one of the wealthiest men in Asia and perceived as an ally of Prime Minister Modi? Prime Minister Modi, have you asked the President to take action on that case? Thank you.
Firstly, India is a democratic country, and our culture and our thought philosophy is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which basically means that the entire world is a family. Every Indian is my own family member. And when it comes to such personal matters, leaders of two countries will not get together on that topic and discuss anything on an individual matter.
Go ahead, please. Yeah, please. Sir, go ahead, please.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. I have a question for you as well. But, Mr. President, you have suggested, with regards to the Russia-Ukraine war, you've suggested several things that Ukraine should give up. The idea of NATO membership, territory that was seized back in 2014 by Russia. What should Russia give up?
Russia has gotten themselves into something that I think they wish they didn't. If I were president, it would not have happened. Absolutely would not have happened. And it didn't happen for 4 years. If you look at what has taken place under President Bush, they lost a lot. Under President Obama, they lost Crimea. Under Biden, it looks like they could lose the whole thing. Under Trump, they lost nothing. Ukraine lost nothing. They didn't give up anything. And you take a look at the other 3 presidents surrounding me, they gave up a lot. I think that when you look at Ukraine and when you look at the mess that they're in, it's got to be ended and it's got to be stopped. Now, Russia's taken over a pretty big chunk of territory, and they also have said from day one, long before President Putin, they've said they cannot have Ukraine be in NATO. They said that very strongly. I actually think that that was the thing that caused the start of the war. And Biden said it, and Zelensky said it. And I think that was one of the reasons, one of the starts of the war. But from long before Putin, they said you cannot have Ukraine going in any way into NATO. And I start from that standpoint. I think everybody knew that. Now, if a better deal can be negotiated, if they are able to make a deal where they can do that, that's fine with me. I really don't care. I want that bloodshed to stop. I don't want to see, we have an ocean between us and the site we're talking about, the site of death. We're calling it the fields of death. We have a big ocean in between us. This is more important for Europe. We shouldn't be in. They have to equalize, and they're going to have to do it fast, but they have to equalize. But as far as the negotiation, it's too early to say what's going to happen. Maybe Russia will give up a lot. Maybe they won't, and it's all dependent on what is going to happen. The negotiation really hasn't started. But I will say, as far as NATO is concerned, from many years before President Putin, I will tell you that I've heard that Russia would never accept that. And I think Ukraine knew that, because Ukraine wasn't in and never requested to be in until more recently. So that's the way it is, and I think that's the way it's going to have to be. Go ahead, please. All right, go ahead, please, with the tie. With the tie, yeah.
Mr. President.
Yes, go ahead, please.
This is Saurabh Shukla from News Mobile. Mr. President, you spoke about Prime Minister Modi as a tough negotiator. Who was a tougher negotiator today, and who has a better negotiating tactic when it comes to tariffs?
Oh, he's a much tougher negotiator than me, and he's a much better negotiator than me. There's not even a contest. Okay? Yeah, go ahead, please. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Reena Bhardwaj from ANI. How do you see this relationship between India and the United States to counter China? And what is your vision when it comes to India, brokering peace in the Ukraine and Russia conflict?
Well, I think we're going to have a very good relationship with China. I got along with President Xi very well until COVID. That was a bridge too far. But until then, I got along with President Xi very, very well. We were very close as leaders go. I don't want to be naive, but as leaders go, I think we were very close. And I think that China is a very important player in the world. I think they can help us get this war over with Ukraine and Russia. And I look at India, I do see the skirmishes on the border, which are quite vicious, and I guess they continue to go on. If I could be of help, I'd love to help, because that should be stopped. That's been going on for a long time. And it's quite violent. It's quite violent. But I would hope that China and India and Russia and U.S. and all of us can get along. It's very important. The power of weaponry today is, and not only nuclear, but nuclear in particular, the power of weaponry is very important. I said before that I had very constructive talks in my first term with President Putin about the denuclearization of the two countries, and then we were going to go to China after we worked some kind of a deal. And we, at the confines of a deal, he really wanted to do it, so did I, denuclearize. And it's such a beautiful term when you think about it. In other words, to bring it down, because the power of those weapons is too great. And I did speak to President Xi about that, and I was getting also a very good response. He's building a very strong nuclear power. He's not very close to Russia or the United States right now, but he will be soon. I mean, he'll catch up over the period of 4 or 5 years, they say. But it would be a great thing if we could, on a military basis. We're going to spend this year $915 billion on military. Russia, without the war, was spending close to 100, but with the war, I can't tell you what they're spending, but they're spending a lot. And China is spending $400 and $450 billion. We're over $900 billion. And I said, it doesn't really make sense, does it? We're spending the money against each other, and we could spend that money for better purpose if we got along. And I'll tell you, I think that something like that will happen. First, when I left, as you know, 4 years ago, we didn't have Israel and the Middle East. We didn't have October 7th, a disaster, the disaster. Nothing was happening. Iran was not going to do anything, because Iran did not have much money at that point. They were broke. They were totally broke. They didn't have money for Hamas or for Hezbollah, and you didn't have Russia with Ukraine, and that would never have happened. But now I come back and I have the whole world is on fire, so I have to put out the fires. But after I put out the fires, I'm going to meet with China and I'm going to meet with Russia, and we're going to see if we can de-escalate, if we can bring it down military, especially as it pertains to nuclear. Please.
Mike, please.
I want to bring in now Yamiche Alcindor, who's been watching this news conference with us. Indian Prime Minister Modi, United States President Trump, of course, here in the East Room, back home in Washington at the White House. And Yamiche, as the rest of the news conference continues, I should note, we said at the top it was potentially going to be what's called a 2-and-2, meaning 2 questions from members of the press from each country. Obviously, we have seen other questions come up, including from our own Gabe Gutierrez, who is in the East Room now. And Yamiche, headlines here, right? When you look at this issue of tariffs dominating the discussion, we knew that China would dominate the discussion as well. And the Prime Minister also asked about his conversation with Elon Musk earlier. The Prime Minister acknowledging he met with Musk. He even had put out a picture of that we have. Fascinating, because Musk is in the position typically reserved for a president or a head of state. Musk, of course, is neither at the moment, along with his family, discussing what the Prime Minister says. You see the photo there was space, technology, innovation, et cetera. Yamiche.
That's right. It was really interesting to, one, let's just say that this is, of course, not a traditional press conference. There's 2-and-2 would not be what you would describe this. This is more like 10-on-10 at this point. Hallie, they're definitely into the number of questions now. I think the headline out of this is a couple things. One, the president directly did talk about China. He said China has been terrible to the United States and that they need to be paying more to the United States when it comes to trade. He said he's trying his best to rectify that. And in doing that, he's talking about the fact that he has these reciprocal tariffs that he's going to be rolling out. He also talked about Russia, and Gabe Gutierrez, our colleague, asked a really good question that he did not clearly directly answer. Gabe asked him specifically, well, you've talked about what Ukraine is going to give up, what concessions Ukraine should give up. The president indicating that Ukraine will likely not be able to go back to its original territory. What should Russia give up? That was the question from Gabe, but President Trump did not directly answer it. Instead, he said Russia might give up a lot, but he's not sure. He said the negotiations are early. But I think it's a key question to ask because, of course, as the president is leaning in saying that Ukraine is going to be giving up something, it's not clear what he wants Russia to give up. He also talked at length about the idea that Russia for years has been against Ukraine joining NATO. Ukraine, of course, has been trying its best to try to join NATO in the years since this most latest war broke out. So I think those are all things that are definitely headlines out of this.
Yamiche Alcindor live for us there outside the White House, and you are taking a live look inside the room as you see some of the president's top aides walking out, the prime minister, the president himself leaving as well after that news conference, roughly about 35 minutes. We have been listening into that, but we've also got some other developing news that we've got to bring you as soon as we sneak in a very quick break. The number of prosecutors resigning after being told to drop corruption charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams now rising. 6 prosecutors have stepped down because of this, all breaking in just the last 60 minutes. Tom Winter is racing to the set. We're going to have him in just a sec. Stay with us. Back now with that breaking news, the number of prosecutors stepping down over the Justice Department's push to drop corruption charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams is now up to 6. 6 prosecutors resigning over this. I want to play for you what we're hearing from Mayor Adams in a one-on-one interview with our NBC News station right here in New York. Watch.
I believe that the AG has made it clear that she's going after weaponization of the Justice Department, and I encourage, and as they say, I'm Eric Adams, and I approve of that message.
That interview conducted prior to what we've learned about the number of prosecutors that have stepped down. We do know that we have this letter now from the now former Manhattan prosecutor who was overseeing this case, Danielle Sassoon, talking about a meeting at the end of January where she says Adams' attorneys, in her words, repeatedly urged what amounted to a quid pro quo. Basically, that the mayor would help the DOJ out on enforcement priorities, a.k.a. immigration crackdowns, only if the indictment were dismissed. Now, Adams' attorney is denying that to NBC News. We should also note Sassoon did not dismiss the charges. She did not dismiss the indictment, despite orders from Main Justice, as it's called, the Department of Justice, and the number 2, Emile Beauvais. You see him there down at the Justice Department. Sources in Washington tell us 5 people from the Public Integrity Department reassigned to the case also refused to drop it. They have also stepped down. Tom Winter is joining us now. Let me take this in a little bit of a lightning round here. First of all, as of 6:50 Eastern time tonight, has the indictment against Mayor Adams been dropped so far as you know?
No, literally as you were reading that, I checked, and no, they have not been dropped yet.
Okay. Do we know who is in charge currently of this case as it stands?
So that's a big question. There's an acting U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York that's been appointed since we last spoke, but it is not yet clear to me who is now actually overseeing this case, because as you reported, the resignations continue. So the resignations, we have one that is the acting U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York.
That's Danielle Sassoon.
That's Danielle Sassoon.
We knew about that mid-afternoon.
100%.
Right? And that's significant and newsworthy in and of itself, that this prosecutor would step down rather than drop these charges.
Absolutely an earthquake in the New York legal community. I cannot understate how big of a deal that is.
Okay.
Now, since that time, we have 5 prosecutors assigned to the Public Integrity Unit, or supervisors assigned to the Public Integrity. They're the ones that oversee all public corruption cases across the country.
And they're based down in Washington.
They're based in Washington. So you want to bring a case like this, you want to go after an elected official, they're there to make sure you've done all the right things, you're fair to them with respect to the election process, primaries, all of those things. They now say, we're not going to go along with dismissing this case. We're out too.
Can these resignations be viewed as anything other than a form of protest from these prosecutors?
I mean, absolutely not. And that's what we surmised prior to getting the letter that Danielle Sassoon sent to the sitting Attorney General of the United States, which now makes it very clear her protestations.
She says quid pro quo. She says that's what this amounted to. Adams' attorneys say no.
Not only that, but since we last talked, we've had an opportunity to go through this dense 8-page letter where she says, look, we were fully prepared under my leadership, under a new grand jury, to get a superseding indictment, which would have alleged, among other things, that Mayor Adams instructed people to destroy evidence, instructed them what to say to the FBI, to mislead the FBI, and destructed evidence himself. Those are serious charges, and that conduct, she says, would have been used to further supplement the allegations they already make about campaign finance violations.
And so people understand this in just super simple terms. Essentially, the allegation that's happening here is that the Department of Justice, obviously the prosecutor in New York, was bringing this case against Mayor Adams, this corruption case, essentially. Main Justice, right, DOJ down in Washington, under the Trump administration, came in and essentially said, we need Adams to cooperate with us on immigration, on crime crackdowns, and we don't think he can do that if he's got this indictment that he's having to deal with, right?
Correct.
Bringing us to today, when Danielle Sassoon, this prosecutor down there today, went, nope, I don't agree with that, I'm out. The 5 other prosecutors down in D.C. said, nope, we're out too. What is the response from Main Justice? What's the response from them?
That's the big question now. They need to find somebody who's going to go along with their orders, which is to dismiss this case. They've shown no indication whatsoever that they want any sort of a change of plan here. I mean, they're going to move forward with dismissing this case, period, end of story. That is their mission to do it.
Because they believe that they are in the right on this, presumably.
They 100% they believe they're in the right. And as they said, and as they've talked about since Donald Trump took office, everybody in the Justice Department, I'm using their words here, is expected to zealously serve the interests of this administration and to fight for their priorities. Well, obviously, in their eyes, that's not what is occurring here at all. And the point that Danielle Sassoon is trying to make in her letter
their priority,
is
they're saying, is immigration. They got to focus in on that. Everybody's got to be rowing in that direction. And it sounds like what you're saying is they feel like this corruption charge against Eric Adams, that doesn't serve this priority that they feel like the president was elected to carry out.
That is 100% the case. They are unapologetic about it. They do not care what we write about it. All of those things are in play. In fairness to them, whether you agree or disagree with their policies, that is their view. Their view is their policies are in the right. They were elected to office, and they were elected on a mandate to get these things done. I offer a question understanding the plumbing in the machine, and it is quite a machine.
I'm sure.
The way law enforcement works here in New York City, just what Eric Adams actually has to do with this, because the things that they've proposed any mayor could do, such as the bringing back of an ICE facility or at least an office at Rikers, that's a common sense thing. By the way, that was removed in a prior mayoral administration under New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. So that is something that would be common sense that any mayor could bring in, is a potential way to deal with this issue when we're talking about gang members who have committed multiple crimes that are being held there that are not in this country legally.
30,000-foot view. You talked about a political earthquake, or just a legal earthquake, I guess, when Danielle Sassoon resigned earlier today. Now that you have 6 people in all stepping down after these orders from DOJ, how do you characterize that? How do we put that into historical context?
Putting it into historical context, it's never been seen before, and the message has now been sent from Main Justice.
Tom Winter, lots more work for you ahead tonight. I know. I'm sure we'll talk again tomorrow. Thank you, friend, for being here with all of these late-breaking developments. Appreciate it. We've also got other news from in Texas, where health officials are reporting a spike in measles cases, with infections confirmed in at least 6 states so far this year. And the latest is in this county, Gaines County, near the border of New Mexico in Texas. 24 measles cases confirmed there, mostly in school-aged kids, all of them unvaccinated. But here's the deal. You see that number 24? Experts think the actual number, the real number of cases, could be in the hundreds. I want to bring in our Erica Edwards, our medical correspondent, who has made her way down to Gaines County. She's joining us now. Huge concern because of how contagious measles is, how quickly it spreads, the impact it can have, and the fact that they think there may be many, many more people, exponentially more people than currently reported, who are grappling with this.
Yeah, that's right. You mentioned that 24 confirmed cases, known cases so far, but health officials here on the ground are telling me that they estimate the true number of measles cases is more like 200 to 300 cases, and that's because it is so contagious. You can walk into a room 2 hours after somebody with measles has been there, and if you're unvaccinated, you can then become infected yourself. A lot of people in this community don't believe in the vaccine because of their religious beliefs. They don't believe in getting tested. I talked with one mom, local mom here today, who has a special needs child who cannot get vaccinated and therefore is at risk for complications of the measles if she were to be infected. I asked, how are you dealing with this? And she said they're just hunkering down, just like the early days of COVID.
We're all scared, and a lot of the special needs kiddos, they have devices in their body. If they're sick, they're not just normal sick. They get encephalitis. We're going to have to rally around each other and help each other through this time.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the age breakdown of those 24 cases so far. 2 have been in adults. The vast majority, as you said, Hallie, have been between the ages of 5 and 17, but 6 have been in kids younger than age 4. Hallie, today I witnessed a mom come to this testing site behind me and get her 2-month-old baby swabbed for measles.
Man.
Hallie.
And that references, I was going to ask you what's behind you there. It is a mobile testing site, correct? Have you seen some decent foot traffic there?
Yeah, this is a mobile testing site here right in Gaines County. They've been getting about maybe 8 to 10 people every day coming here this week. They might actually, stay another week if the need is there. Right now, you're seeing this was a van that came in earlier with at least 8 children in it. All were being tested for measles. I talked with the young mom. She said that one of her children had a fever of up to 103. This is a very sort of tight-knit, rural, small community.
Yeah.
And there still is a lot of mistrust. I talked with one of the doctors who's been treating the kids in the hospital about an hour away from here in Lubbock. She said that she's still dealing with a lot of mistrust.
Also,
of disinformation. There's a lot of information out there about vaccines and vaccine preventable illnesses that just isn't true. Obviously, parents are going to make a lot of decisions for their kids, and we want to try to help them understand the facts so that they can make the best decisions possible.
Now, adding to the problem here is that there is also quite a significant language barrier. The folks in the community that's being affected right now mostly speak a specific dialect of German called Low German. And so just basic communication is also proven to be quite a challenge. Hallie.
It also appears like it could be one of the first tests for now Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who was sworn in today, of course, as the new health secretary.
Yeah, and and pediatricians I've talked with are concerned that there could be some influence over vaccines. Kennedy, of course, as HHS head, is over the CDC, which we know makes vaccine recommendations. Their first meeting of that vaccine committee is here in the next couple of weeks, so we will be paying attention.
Erica Edwards, live for us down there in Gaines County, Texas. Erica, thank you very much. That's a wrap for this hour. More coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.